what influence do you have on the way the story is told in the end as a cameraman?
Well, I think the first thing is that you have to understand what the story is about. And that's the moment that you can decide what are you going to do with it. How are you going to tell it? And that's why it's so good that we have been working together for a long time, that we don't have to argue about like very simple technical things. They come just, they just come. Because we know that we are going to use like, I don't know, the film will be black and white, for example. We don't argue about, the style, how it should be. Basically, it comes by itself.
What was the problem or the task you had as a DOP, especially black and white?
In our case, the action takes place in 1937. And our idea was to tell the stories in such a way that we could be closer to the characters, to basically the real time. So the first decision would be like what kind of lens to use. For example, we could go for some vintage lenses and try to recreate this kind of feeling. But we decided to use like normal modern lens, just with lots of filtration, so that we could control the amount of softness and blurriness. And also, when we are talking about black and white, nowadays it's mostly associated with like film noir and like really with dramatic lighting and high contrast. But when you look at the photographs of like for 20s or 30s, you would notice that there is no this kind of black and white how we imagine it nowadays. It's much more subtle, less contrast. Basically, they just didn't have color photography at all. They would shoot it in color if they could, but no, they just had this black and white. So the first thing we decided not to exaggerate light. So no high contrast. Even if the image looks dull, it will be more precisely associated with the exact time. So it's not taking place like in 60s or 70s or so it's 1937.
Maybe you can tell us about problems you had with these shots and maybe how to solve them.
Well, actually, it's a very good approach to think in terms of one take or one shot, because you're building the situation very naturally. Of course, it's much more difficult to get it right, like from so many elements. But basically, we thought, yes, there will be one shot, but we were ready to make some cuts where we felt something was wrong. And but still, at the same time, when we built the situation, like we had like 50 or 100 people, all together. Somehow we found that using this approach of one shot, it kind of, it took some time, like 2 or 3 or 4 hours we were like rehearsing, but we had very good, timing, and the actors really liked this approach because it's not for them just to look one direction and say one sentence. They could really play also. So it's actually a very good approach at all, in general, even if you are working with cuts. Even then, it's worth to see the situation as a whole.
I remember the one shot with the theater director, and she goes to the stage and back to her seat, and then somebody comes through the door. Do you work like with a Steadicam?
No, it's handheld.
It's handheld.
Yes.
Okay.
We wanted to have this kind of live camera because Steadicam it's too fluid. Mm-hmm. We had to have this feeling of nervousness, so that we used handheld camera mostly.
Mm-hmm. Was there? We talked about already about the problems. Was there other problems on set you faced and you have to solve?
Well, there are always. I think with shooting, it's basically one big problem all the time. Every day is a problem. You don't have time. You don't have. The light is going away, or there are problems all the time. I think you just have to be very flexible, especially, you know, like I would say this kind of budget we had, it's kind of indie level budget for us, and so you have to be flexible. You have to think all the time how to find the best solution for, you know, for the situation you have. I don't think we had many problems, like problems. What we did, we found it very interesting. We built a custom lamp, I would say. We used a LED, a small LED, which are nowadays they're really strong. So like, I don't know, a couple of years ago it was like, I don't know, 100 watts equivalent. So nowadays they are much stronger. So we built like a cube of gobos with a single LED lamp inside, and with this single lamp you could like illuminate this kind of room. Like, well, it's not like, you know, the main light is just adds some patches everywhere. You can just. So that was our kind of technically one of the most interesting things we did.
On what machine do you shot the movie?
Sony Venice. You know, like regarding technical things, it's always, you know.
Yeah, blah blah blah. Yeah.
It's just a tool, basically.
Yeah.
Why this? Well,
It works.
it just works. Yeah.
Of course.
So we had these very nice lenses, like Angenieux Optimo lenses, the new one, prime lens. They're really beautiful, like really beautiful. But we still had to kind of blur them even more. We had like a sandwich of filters. We had like glimmer glass and black diffusion together. So it was like really like soft.
Maybe you have some tips or some advice you want to give if there's somebody who really wants to be in DOP in this industry.
Well, my advice would be really careful and think twice. Just look at all the possibilities that are, you know, coming right now, like artificial intelligence generating images, and of course videos are next stage. And so I think this kind of old style approach to movie making, of course it will remain at some level, but yeah, think twice how you can live in environment when you will have to compete with AI. I think that's really, you know,